The word Lent comes from the Anglo-Saxon term for the lengthening of the days in springtime. It's a springtime holiday and season, and the beginning of Lent is always measured from the end of Lent, which is Easter. Now, in the Western Church, Easter is figured as the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox, which means it's a movable feast. It doesn't always occur on the same date. But once Easter is figured, you can count back 40 days, not including Sundays, and you will arrive at Ash Wednesday. Now, the Sundays aren't included because Sundays are always considered little Easters, and so they're not technically fast days. So when you read the church calendar, it will not say the Sundays of Lent, it will say the Sundays in Lent. Ash Wednesday is the beginning of our Lenten observance, and Ash Wednesday comes immediately after Shrove Tuesday, or what we call Fat Tuesday. Often on Shrove Tuesday, there are great celebrations. The Mardi Gras is the most famous of these. But the celebration then sits right next to Ash Wednesday, which is a day of penitence, a day of deep self-reflection, a day of recollecting that we fail more often than we would like. That too often we don't even notice our failures and certainly aren't repentant for them. It's a day of deep self-honesty. Lent, as we come to know it, is a time when we become self-reflective. We look into our hearts, into our lives. We acknowledge the things that we've done wrong. We acknowledge those things that need to be repaired or redeemed, relationships, things we've done to hurt people, mistakes we've made, missteps. And during that time, it's not a time to beat ourselves up. It is a time to be honest with ourselves and to say, I intend to do better, and with God's help, I will. So Lent as a whole season is a way of both preparing for the Easter celebration, but it is also a time of reflecting on our own lives and determining that with God's help, those lives can be better, more fulfilled, and more holy. A number of years ago, I mentioned taking on something for Lent, and long after Lent was over, in fact, it was during Advent, later that same year, that a couple came to me and said, you know, you said about taking something on for Lent? I said, yeah. They said, well, we've decided to adopt a child from China. It wasn't exactly what I was talking about, but that's what they were led to do after a period of reflection, not even during the season of Lent. So our prayer practices, our practices of fasting or taking something on during Lent, are not really limited to Lent. If we begin to exercise, we would want to keep that going beyond Easter. If we want to think of taking on some ministry, we wouldn't necessarily stop that when Lent is over. Sometimes, like this couple, we don't even see the real opportunity to take something on until a great deal of time has passed. Whatever you decide to do, to give up or take on during Lent, make sure that it's something that genuinely prepares you for Holy Week, for Easter, for the new life that we claim comes through Jesus Christ. Because just because someone else is doing it doesn't mean that you have to do it. Look to find the thing that's most meaningful for you, that will help you journey with Jesus ultimately toward Jerusalem, toward death, and through death into new life.
The purpose of these Lenten videos is to help us develop spiritual practices in our lives. Our lives are filled with distraction, time is fleeting, relationships are somewhat meaningless at times. These spiritual practices help ground us. They're not a list of rules, they're not one more thing you have to do, but it's a way to be involved in knowing God and knowing yourself and knowing your neighbor better. Each week at the end of the video, I will give you practical ways that you can implement this spiritual practice in your life. Next week, we'll start with simplicity, moving into stewardship, then service, then talking about prayer and healing, then dying well, and ending with celebration on Easter.